Hi friends, it's Julie, and today I'm here with part one of a very big book haul for you guys. Over the last few months, I've collected quite a few books between library sales and my birthday, and I tried filming this video once before, but the footage was like 30 minutes long, so I decided to refilm it and split it up. So today I'm going to be sharing with you all the fantasy, sci-fi, and horror novels that I have collected, and then in part two, which I'll be posting pretty soon, I'll be focusing on fiction, nonfiction, and mystery and thrillers. So let's just get to the books. So the first series that I'm just briefly going to mention is, of course, the Witcher series by Andrzej Sapkowski. I have been raving about these in my last few catch-up videos, and I now have all the books except for one. I had a whole bunch of gift cards to use at Barnes & Noble, so I just decided to go ahead and buy this whole series, but they didn't have book number 2 in the series, so I'm gonna have to order that one on Amazon, but I'm just loving these so much. I have already read books 1 and 2, and those are the short story collections, and now that I have finished these, I can move on to the actual books of this series, and I'm so excited. This is an adult fantasy series that is pretty popular, and it follows this main character named Geralt, who is a witcher, and he just kind of travels around in his world and kills and fights monsters. It's kind of like a medieval type world, and I absolutely love it. I love the characters, I love the world, and I can't wait to continue on with this series. And then continuing on with fantasy, I have Among Thieves by Douglas Hulick. This is the first book in a grimdark fantasy series that I have been wanting to check out, and I found it at the sale. And I believe this is the first book in the Tales of the Kin series, I believe is what it's called. But in this book, we follow our main character, who is a man named Droth, and he is a part of this group of thieves. And one day he gets in his possession this book that has the power to like destroy emperors or something along those lines, and people have been searching for this book for a really long time. It's very sought after. People are willing to kill for it, and somehow our main character gets a hold of that, and that's really all I know. I love books about thieves, and grimdark fantasy is a subgenre of fantasy that I'm really wanting to get into this year. And so going along with that, I also have Gardens of the Moon by Stephen Erickson, and this is book 1 of the Malazan Book of the Fallen series, which is like a huge epic fantasy series that's grimdark fantasy. And I tried reading like the little inner flaps, like I give you guys like a synopsis of this book, but it's just really confusing. So once I read it, I will let you guys know what I think. And then at the library sale, I also found this huge copy of The Mists of Avalon by Marion Zimmer Bradley. I've been wanting to check this out for a while. I feel like this is one of those fantasy books that everyone has read. This is a retelling of King Arthur, but it focuses on like the women like behind King Arthur. I've heard pretty good things about it, although I haven't really heard very many people talk about it on BookTube. I think that's because it's like an older book, but I found it and it was in this amazing huge floppy paperback, which I scored a lot of these in the library sale, and huge paperbacks are my absolute favorite like type of a book, so I got pretty lucky there. And then the last fantasy book I'm going to throw in here is more like an urban fantasy, and that is Dark Fever by Karen Marie Moning. This is the first book in her Fever series, and I actually read this book a few years ago, and I really enjoyed it, but I didn't continue on with the series, and so I've kind of forgotten, you know, what happened in the book, but so many people have been reading this recently, and so it kind of like made me want to pick it up again. I really enjoyed it the first time around. It had a kind of similar tone to it like the Sookie Stackhouse novels by Charlene Harris, which I read and loved years ago. Except for this one, it deals more with fairies instead of vampires and werewolves. So, you know, sometimes you're just in the mood for some guilty pleasure books, and that's exactly what this is. And now moving on to the sci-fi portion. The first book I have is Six Wakes by Mur Lafferty. I talked about this in one of my recent wrap-up videos, so I will link to that if you want to check out my thoughts on it, because I have already read this and I really enjoyed it. But this is a sci-fi murder mystery set in space with clones, and it was really, really good. Like, this mystery was so complex. There were so many layers to it. I absolutely loved it. It's not like over-the-top sci-fi. It's very easy to understand. It's more just kind of like futuristic, and it was very thought-provoking. There's a lot of things in here that you just kind of sit and ponder, but I would definitely recommend this. I haven't heard very many people talk about this one either on BookTube, which is kind of surprising. It was really good. I would definitely recommend it. And then up next, I have Kindred by Octavia E. Butler. Been wanting to read this for a very long time. I've heard nothing but wonderful, wonderful things about her and this book. I believe she was the first woman of color to even write in the sci-fi genre, so that definitely makes me want to pick this up. I do know that this book deals with some pretty heavy subject matter. I believe it follows this young black girl, and she is sent back in time like multiple times. And every time she goes back, she has to save this white man at different times of his life. And it turns out that this white man, I believe, is the father of one of her ancestors. I believe he's like a plantation owner or something along those lines. So definitely some heavy subject matter, but like I said, I've heard nothing but wonderful, wonderful things, and I can't wait to read this. And then next is a book that I actually bought for myself for my birthday, and that was A Closed and Common Orbit by Becky Chambers. I've been wanting to read this since I finished The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet earlier this year. That book has become like one of my favorite books of all time. I absolutely loved it and the characters, and so I can't wait to read this, and I'm going to pick it up very soon. I just love Becky Chambers' writing so much. I'm not going to go too much into detail about the synopsis of this book because I feel like it gives some stuff away that happens at the end of The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet, but this book just continues on with two characters that we met in the first book. And I've heard nothing but wonderful things about this too, and I'm so excited to read this, and I'll probably pick it up very, very soon. Then the next book I have is Seven Eves by Neil Stephenson. And I have been searching for this book at a used bookstore for the longest time. I really wanted to own it because it's so big, and I have a hard time checking out like really big books from the library because I feel like so much pressure to read them, in such a short amount of time. And so I finally found this, and so of course I had to buy it. This book just sounds so cool. I've heard absolutely wonderful things about this. And this is set like in the future, and Earth as we know it is like being destroyed. So people are leaving Earth for this distant planet, in hopes to save humanity. And then we go like 5,000 years into the future, and we've been living on this other planet, and humanity has somehow survived. Well, now this planet, something is happening to it. It can no longer host life or something like that. And so we are traveling back to Earth after 5,000 years. So we have no idea what has become of it, and it just sounds so awesome. Yeah, if you have read this and enjoyed it, please leave me a comment down below because I can't wait to read this one either. It just sounds so great, and I'm really hoping that my husband will enjoy it too. He's really getting into sci-fi recently, and this book just has such wonderful reviews. And then I have a copy of Hyperion by Dan Simmons. And this book I don't know too much about, although my husband has started this and he's really enjoying it. He says that the writing is very, very accessible, which is really good to hear because I'm still pretty new to sci-fi. But this book is set in this world called Hyperion, and there is some sort of like godlike creatures called the Shrikes, and I know that there is time travel, and that's really all I know about it. But once he finishes it, then I will probably pick it up and I will let you guys know what I think. But I do know that this won the Hugo Award, and a lot of people really love this book. And then the final sci-fi book that I have is Contact by Carl Sagan. I found this at the library sale for like $1 and decided to pick it up. I mean, I loved this movie as a little girl so much. Who didn't love Jodie Foster in Contact? And so when I found this, I decided to pick it up. I don't remember too much about the story other than her making contact with aliens through that huge like satellite thing. That's all I really remember from it. So I'm looking forward to reading this, and it had this awesome picture of Carl Sagan on the back. So yeah, definitely had to get this one. And then moving on to horror, I was a little disappointed. I only managed to find 2 horror novels at the library sale. I was really hoping there would be more, but still managed to find 2. And the first one was The Terror by Dan Simmons. Yes, another Dan Simmons book. I had no idea that I had 2 of his books until I got home, and they're like completely different genres, which is really interesting. But this book I heard Katie from Life Between Words talk about. She's actually talked to me about it a couple times. And this is about these men, and it's set in 1845, and these men are on board some sort of boat, and it gets stranded out in the Arctic Circle, and then something starts killing them off. I don't know if it's just the elements that's killing them off. I don't know if there's something out there that's killing them. I'm not really sure, but I will find out, and then I will let you guys know what I think. And then finally, the last book I have is The Witching Hour by Anne Rice. This is the first book in her Mayfair Witch series, and I have been searching all over for a copy of this book. It is another one of those huge ones, but I am a sucker for anything that has to do with witches. Witch TV shows, witch books, just anything. I just have been so fascinated by witches like my whole entire life. And I've heard really, really wonderful things about this series, and I've never read anything by Anne Rice before, so I'm very, very excited. I can't wait to read this one. If you've read this, please leave me a comment down below because I would love to hear. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it, or if you have any other good witch book recommendations for me, I would love that as well. So those are some of the books that I have bought recently. I'll be posting part 2 of this book haul very soon, and like I said, in that one I will be focusing on fiction, nonfiction, and mystery and thrillers. But please leave me a comment down below and let me know if you've read any of these books and what you thought about them. But I think that's it for the day, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all again very soon. Happy reading. Bye.